What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Today we are discussing the turn heard around the world. That is the breakup of the Vision 6 months in. What the ever-living hell did we just witness on Monday Night Raw, Bragster? It was unbelievable. It was teased all night. Never mind, like, months of build-up like we usually get.
No.
But the Vision, this thing that everyone saw going on for years and years, being like sort of their version of the Bloodline, has fallen apart in the space of 6 months.
Yeah.
What are your instant thoughts on it?
I think this is a blessing in disguise. I ultimately loved the Vision. I understand for some people it maybe didn't click as much. And I guess part of that was because of Bronson and Bron Breakker's popularity just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
To the point where storyline-wise, them being the lackeys to Seth kind of made no sense. At the start it did, but it got to the point where they got so popular that it actually was like, well, does it make sense? Especially with like Bronson beating Roman.
Yeah.
Like that's a huge deal, you know, and that's something that Seth has done in the past, yes, but it also doesn't diminish how big of an achievement that is. And it kind of didn't really make sense. And obviously the reports are that this has happened because of an injury. If so, that probably means that Seth is going to lose the bout very, very quickly, possibly to Punk. Although I feel like maybe that there's going to be something that happens to do with that. But I think this is a blessing in disguise, because one complaint we've had for ages, as much as we love Triple H's long-term storytelling, one of the difficulties and one of the criticisms is the fact that everything revolves around WrestleMania. And it's very rare you get big moments at other points during the year, which is why the John Cena heel turn was so cool when that happened. We've had a few this year, to be fair, but it's been a problem that we've sort of always had, is that all the big moments happen from January the 1st to WrestleMania, and that's kind of it.
Yeah.
With a lot of other bits feeling like filler. Right now, the entire road to WrestleMania that everyone had planned in their heads has just been ripped up to shreds and completely blown out the water. Whether Seth is injured or not, or whether it's ultimately serious or not, it doesn't matter. It's blown everything out the water, which now means that the excitement and the buzz in the wrestling community has then happened again.
Yeah.
You know, the report came out from the Wrestling Observer newsletter that of what the teams for War Games were going to be. Ultimately, I do not like those leaks. Do not like it, because I think it ruins a lot of possibly what's to come, especially for something like War Games, you know, which the entire one of the best parts of War Games is the build-up.
Yeah. So
you're kind of ruining a bit of that. But it's already thrown that out of the water, because what in the world is going on? And I think that's the feeling everyone's got, is what is going on. But everyone's ultimately excited for what is happening next, which is a feeling a lot of people have been complaining they've not really had recently.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that, yeah, like those were the main things. I mean, I've got a bunch of notes on my phone here in front of me, but the first thing that came to mind was, well, what the hell does this mean for the War Games stuff that we all heard about? And we all saw it. We all saw the reports. We saw the big surprises. We saw the teams, and we thought, well, sort of on the babyface side, that's kind of how we expected it to be. But then obviously there were a couple of surprises in there, obviously with like Austin Theory and Brock being in there, and then obviously the Vision being involved. I think that obviously tears everything up and changes it quite significantly. Whether that changes a whole lot, I don't know. You might see one or two changes now. I think the War Game stuff mainly depends on Seth's injury. I think, obviously, if he's able to sort of be in the ring and take some bumps, then hopefully that suggests that it's maybe not like a dislocation or something like that. Maybe it is just a bit of a fracture, but something that's going to heal relatively quickly, and they can sort of paper over the cracks, as it were, and get them through to the next part of it, or get him to War Games pretty much healed. Because again, fractures are relatively quick in the grand scheme of things, rather than a dislocation or something like that. But obviously, we hope for a speedy recovery for him and hope everything's okay in that regard. But of course, I think that's been my biggest takeout or takeaway of it, is that really this whole thing changes everything in the WWE going forward, whether it's the immediate future or in 5, 6, 7 years time, like Heyman did on the Ariel Helwani podcast, when he said, yeah, we've got the next 5, 6 WrestleManias planned out.
Yeah.
I think some of those WrestleManias have probably been brought forward by 2 or 3 years, if anything. Whether that was the plan all along, obviously only time will tell, and I'm sure that Seth's injury might have played a part in it. But it's like you say, the popularity of those two men in Bron and Bronson were just going up and up and up every week. It was getting to a point where they were either going to do something, or they were going to change the dynamic slightly and maybe put them on more of an equal footing to Seth, and it wasn't just Seth's group. I think something like that was coming. It was just a case of how quickly that would be. But going into the actual segment itself, the thing that I probably liked the most was the fact that it was Bron making the decision there and then. No one else knew what was going on. And I'm saying this based off what I saw on screen. You can tell from Heyman's reaction, he had no idea. Bronson was like, what the hell's going on? This wasn't a pre-planned thing. They didn't all sort of gather around him and he goes, what's happening? And then they take him out. It was Bron decided he'd had enough and speared him. Yeah. And then what I like afterwards is him stepping up to Bronson and to Heyman as well and saying, make a choice. You're either with me or you leave it here, and that's it. Yeah. And obviously they've both decided to go with the young buck in Bron. I wasn't surprised by Bronson going. I was surprised at sort of the reaction from Heyman more than anything, because we know Heyman's history. He's very conniving. He's very much a bad guy. I felt like there was going to be a moment where he started to grin as if this was the plan all along. But he wasn't. He was when he lifted their arms up, he looked just as shocked that he was doing it as anybody else. Yeah. So I think that's a very interesting dynamic from day one of whatever this is called, whether it's the Vision continued without Seth, or if it's got a different name, or if they don't, if it's these two and that's it. It could be any way, which way they do it. But I think it's a very interesting dynamic to have Heyman on the back foot almost, and then him trying to get with the plan, when you've got someone like Bron who doesn't really have a plan and will just do what he wants. Yeah. I think that's a very interesting dynamic. And it'll be very interesting to see, obviously, how that develops as time goes on. But also, I think the other part of it is, obviously, if everything is okay with Seth, and obviously we get him back fit and healthy relatively quickly, because I imagine they're going to want that with the story they're going to want to be telling over the next couple of months. It's kind of what now for him? Because it doesn't really feel like he's set up to be the babyface here, does it?
No. It doesn't feel that way at all. The crowd ultimately cheered Bron and Bronson, and that was inevitably going to happen with the turn, no matter what, no matter how it sort of came about. Similar to Mania. Seth, that heel turn got cheered. Yeah. But it was still a heel turn, because it was the ramifications afterwards. It's how you come out on the next time you appear. So it's all about how are they going to come out on Raw next week as to how they're going to be perceived. Are they going to be perceived as the baby faces or the heels? I feel like they have to be perceived as the heels, ultimately, because you can't go into this feud with Roman that they've had and, attack Jey Uso and attack CM Punk and be baby faces. You just can't do that. That just is not how it works. Even in the modern day where we have tweeners, it doesn't really work. Yeah. They can turn to tweeners, but they can't start off as tweeners. The other issue you've got is the fact that, yes, Seth cannot be the babyface in this either, because with the thing with Seth is that ultimately he has been a downright dastardly heel for 6 months straight. He has ruled the roost. He has been the most arrogant man on the planet and the most frustrating person to watch in the best way possible. So you can't have him as the babyface, but what you can do is you can have him as a tweener. I think you can tell a really interesting story where Seth is on his own, asking people for help, and no one wants to help him because of how he has been. That, I think, is the story you've got to tell with Seth.
Yeah.
And you can tell that even if he's out with an injury when he comes back, of everyone not forgetting what he's done. Similar to how Bayley with Damage Control when she turned babyface. But the difference is obviously the crowd were on Bayley's side, but the wrestlers were not. This time, I think it will be both won't be. Where the crowd won't know what to do, and neither will the wrestlers, but that will be the point. I mean, that will be the point with Seth's character. The only worry I have in terms of Seth's character is where do we go from here in terms of matches, you know? And I think a big thing in that is probably to do with injuries. But as I think a lot of people sort of under the belief that we were finally going to get Seth versus Roman at Mania one-on-one, and I don't think they can do that anymore. I understand they've got a lot of history. I understand that it would make sense to do the match, but I feel like it doesn't make sense this year to do the match, given what's just happened.
Yeah,
because you've got to wrap up this entire Bronson storyline. You've got to wrap up the bloodline storyline that's going on, and then somehow still lead to them two hating each other and wanting to fight each other. And the only way I saw that happening was Roman possibly winning the Rumble and obviously going after the title that Seth had. Without Seth having a title, there is no reason for Roman to go after him.
Yeah.
Anymore. There's just no reason. Obviously, that can change, and obviously he does still have the title, but I truly believe that you don't do this turn either unless the plan is for him to lose the title, or for the build-up to be Bron versus Seth at Mania.
Yeah.
Those are the only two options for me in terms of like what Seth's title run.
Yeah.
Is you go for that, you go for the latter or you go for the former. When it comes to the Paul Heyman stuff that you mentioned earlier, I think that is really interesting. The fact that he doesn't know, the fact that this was Bron's decision, which is brilliant because that means it's like the perfect way of displaying Bron's character was how that turn happened, which is he just hadn't like Bron's entire thing is twitching and just like I'm gonna do what I want to do, and in that moment he wanted to murder Seth, so that's exactly what he went and did. And I love the fact that Bronson didn't know, but again stuck with his mate, stuck with the man that's actually supported him. And then you've got Paul Heyman, and now I think a really good story to tell would be Bron going after the title and failing originally. Yeah. And I think you tell that through I unfortunately do believe that Seth is injured. I think that just makes sense. I mean, it would be funny if they trick us twice with the same trick. It would
I don't think they can though. I think once is dicey enough. I think twice is very literally. You're getting very dangerous territory there.
But I feel like I feel like what you then do is you have Seth not go into the match with Punk 100%. You have Punk win the title. You then have Bron go after him. You know, the whole point being going after the title, and him failing on the first go. And I know this is a very much babyface style storyline, but I think the storyline you tell is that Bron needs Paul Heyman because Paul Heyman calms him down. Paul Heyman adds the plan. The whole point of Bron is that he doesn't have a plan. He does what he wants. But that's the problem. That's the thing that stops him then from getting the title, is that he does what he wants and he doesn't think calculated. So you have Paul Heyman, ironically, tame the beast. Doing the exact same thing he's done before that made Brock so successful. That's also then how you could possibly bring Brock in as well, in the sense of Brock's like, I trust this man with my life, this, that, and the other.
Mm.
He made me a very successful person. He'll make you very successful, etc., etc. Almost like a mini passing of the torch without it having to be a match.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the interesting element of Paul Heyman comes in. I think that you can tell a really interesting story, obviously, but it all depends on what condition is Seth in.
Yeah.
Because if he's going to be out for a while, then we're really going off left field. If Seth comes back within like a couple of months, maybe just misses War Games, maybe that's why they've rushed it a little bit, is because he's going to miss War Games, so we'll have him lose the title here, then have the War Games match, and then we can move on to the storylines left, right, and center. I don't know. I truly don't know where we're going with this, because and that's what makes it interesting to me. Is that there are so many different avenues, and they all depend on the tiniest little things as well.
Yeah, depends on certain branches going left or right, and how things develop from there. I think I agree that I think part of the story with Bron has to be that he doesn't win it straight away. I think there has to be some build to it. I don't think maybe that's the way they'll go. I think depending on how Seth is, they might just put it on him and go, let's just go for it. Let's go straight from the off and just not make this a long thing. Let's just put the belt on him and build him and go from there. In terms of Seth, though, I like the idea of him realizing that he doesn't need everyone else. He just needs to be Seth, and he can have the title. He can be the guy and still carry get everything he wants without having this group around him.
Yeah.
And again, you heard him in that promo last night on Raw that basically he did it on his own. He beat Cody on his own. He's won the title before on his own. He didn't need Division. He doesn't need Bron. He doesn't need Bronson. He didn't need Paul. He beat Roman and Punk on his own at Mania. Like, we know Seth can do all this on his own. He just needs to convince himself of it. And maybe by beating Bron at his lowest ebb, as in Seth's being at his lowest ebb, not Bron, but Seth being at his lowest ebb and still beating Bron, you can then tell a very interesting story of what does that Seth Rollins look like. And again, I think you can make him a babyface, but he just has to be edgier. I think you have to, if you're going to do that story, you have to give a bit of an edge to him. He can't just be la-di-da-da-da. He can't just be, oh, isn't it great to be here and this, that, and the other. He has to have an edge to him. He has to be that pure wrestler that is going to out-wrestle you every night, and he's going to take everything away from you on any given night. So yeah, but again, like you said, I think it's a very interesting scenario with Seth and with what Bron looks like next, and then there's the whole Bronson element to it, which could go any which way, which will definitely be interesting to see. But again, going to like the entire landscape of the WWE, I think if you look at all the big players, this changes things left, right, and center. Like, let's just look at the list and see how it may affect people. Like, we'll start with Punk. Obviously, he doesn't know who the hell he's gonna be facing for this belt, because it could be Seth, it could be someone in a tournament that decides who the guy faces it on a Saturday night's main event, or any random Monday Night Raw. They could do something as quick as Seth is that pissed off at Bron, he wants a match next Monday. Bron spears him straight away. 1, 2, 3, Bron's the champion, and then basically Punk's still number one, and there you go.
Yeah.
There could be other things at play where maybe, totally left field, Punk gets involved with the Vision and joins them, and then something different happens. I'm not saying that's going to happen. It won't happen.
I've heard people say it on Twitter, though. I've heard people
have
theorize
suggested it, yeah. But like, Punk maybe does something like that. You've got, obviously, we've spoke about Seth, the Usos. This changes their whole dynamic, because obviously, the end of Monday Night Raw changed their dynamic because of the way Jay lost, because he went and helped Jimmy. He lost again. Why does that leave them? They obviously had the fight with Roman in Crown Jewel, in terms of Roman saying, I don't want to see you till Christmas, which I thought was a strange line, but maybe makes more sense now in the hindsight of things after what happened last night. You've then got Brock as an element, because he said when he last saw Heyman, we need to talk. Is Brock something to do with this breakup? Do they know something we don't? Like, is Brock maybe pioneering things in the background and pulling the right levers to get Heyman on side? We'll wait and see. Cody will obviously be affected by this because he might be getting a new challenger in the form of Bronson or Bron at some point, maybe
Yeah.
Rumble or Mania time. And then the one that kind of interests me the most out of all this is Roman. Because Roman is very much floating on his own at the minute. He's detached himself from the Usos. He's told them he doesn't want anything to do with them.
Yeah.
He had this long rambling, and again, I think some of his best promo stuff is when he is walking away from the ring and he's just pouring it all out there and just putting it out in front of everybody. And he's saying on the way out of the ring on Saturday night's main event at Crown Jewel, that like something needs to change. He needs to go back to the way he was, and he's gonna have to do it his own way. He can't do it the way he wants to do it.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very interesting way of putting it because Seth now is very much in that same position.
Yeah.
Granted, he still has the title. He has that thing that he's always wanted, but he doesn't have his backup crew. He's on his own. He's probably at his lowest ebb as you can be as champion, really, in the grand scheme of things. And Roman being in that same position, and there being this sort of force that's got to be taken on, part of me is wondering, do they put the two of them together again and say, I've got your back, you've got my back. We've obviously got a history. God knows they've got a history. But, like, is the thing that puts us back to where we were at the top of the mountain, is that being with each other? And is that what changes the match being at Mania and puts that into the background for now because they've got each other's backs now? Because, like I mentioned before, Roman doesn't have the Usos. He doesn't have a bloodline. He doesn't have a Heyman to back him up. He's on his own. Seth doesn't have his Heyman. He doesn't have his Vision. He doesn't have anyone. He's burned all the bridges he can possibly burn at this point. And maybe the one guy that they can turn to is the one guy you'd never thought in a million years that they would turn back to. But maybe this is the time to do it. What did you think?
I think that's a very interesting theory. That it's something that I even considered myself in terms of when, especially with War Games on the horizon, was the possibility of what if the baby faces are outnumbered and they all just look at each other and go, there's only one man that will help us. And all being reluctant to do it because of everything that's happened. And you almost have Seth trying to get involved because he wants his hands on the Vision, but they're like, no. And then he gets in. Because then it creates a really interesting aspect. If Seth is on the babyface side, but out of reluctancy, it can't be out of buddy, whatever within like a month and a half. It can't be. It has to, if Seth is okay to do the match, it has to be a matter of we're fine. The way you could get to that Mania match, there's two things, right? Which is if he ends up in that War Games match, he either does help them, or he does a Dakota Kai Tegan Nox situation and just beats him, and just beats him up, and like turns in that moment again. And then could turn on Roman, and Roman's trusted him or whatever, or could be an entire ruse of the century type thing again, where the Vision isn't broken up, which I think is brilliant initially, and then the more I think about it, it then makes the eventual breakup later on far worse. Because if it is a ruse, then I just think it would make if it was Bronson that turned first, and then it ended up being a ruse, I don't think I would have minded it as much. But the fact that it's Bron, and it's like no, this has to be it. But that could definitely be somewhere that they go with it. It reminds me, while you were talking, my brain was sort of going, none of these feel like factions. All of the factions feel disjointed. The Vision are disjointed. The Bloodline are disjointed. You've got this entire thing between LA Knight and Punk and Jey Uso. Is there a possibility that for the first time on the main roster, we get a classic War Games match? Classic NXT War Games. classic NXT War Games matches, despite the fact that, yes, okay, they had Undisputed Era in them a lot, right? But what you did have, especially on the women's side, was all these feuds just suddenly coming together to the point where they don't even like each other on their own team. But battle lines be drawn because they're so against another person. So you could end up with Roman being so against Jay. You end up with Seth being so against Bron. You end up with someone else like Punk being so against LA Knight.
Yeah.
Brock being so against, I don't know, let's say Cena, for example, right?
Yeah.
And you end up with these battle lines drawn, and none of them like each other. But the battle lines end up being drawn because they're put together, and then you get the classic War Games that you usually end up getting in NXT that we don't really get on the main roster, because the one criticism of War Games has been how convoluted it's been. It's been very much, oh, magically all the babyfaces are suddenly getting along. Oh, wow, there's magically a heel faction that's suddenly running the booth. Like, I think you could end up with a really interesting scenario where you end up with two War Games teams that just hate each other.
Yeah.
Like, they all just hate each other. And that could end up with do the people want to win, or do they maybe cheap shot each other? Or could you end up with like a freeway War Games, which we haven't had since the very beginning, where you end up with a Bloodline, a Vision, and a bunch of random baby faces next to each other. I think there's so many interesting scenarios that they can go with this, and I think it's completely blown my mind in the best way possible. Because as you said, like the fact that we're even considering the fact that Roman and Seth could be on the same page after everything that's happened this year is beyond me.
Yeah. Which, again, I wasn't, like, when I was thinking of Seth being on that War Games team, I kind of doubted it, because you're going to have, if it's Punk and, say, Cody, add Roman, and then maybe Sammy or Jay, one of those sort of, underdog baby faces they like to put in there. They all have a reason to hate Seth. They all have a reason not to have him on the team. They all have a reason the bridge is being burned. And it's all very recent. So it's kind of like, how does that work? And I'm not entirely sure, but obviously they'll find a way to do it, because I think that's the way they're obviously going to go if he's fit enough to do it. But the reason I kind of stuck with the Roman thing in my head was kind of like, they're both in the same scenario. And it's kind of like, maybe the way to get each other out of it is with each other. Not necessarily that it's going to be all la-di-da, but it's like, look, we know how well we work together. We know we can do this. If we put our minds together, we can be better than anyone else on the roster. Why don't we team up? And again, and then there's even a story you can tell with Cody on that, where it's like Cody's like, oh, so you had to go at me for backing the guy up when it was us in the Bloodline, but now it's you need something. You're now going back to, and you could return to that. Maybe maybe you do a Cody Roman 3 and end the trilogy there. That's a way to go, and I'd certainly be interested in that story if they told it. If Roman wasn't on his own and hadn't sort of banished the Usos, I don't think I would be looking into this or thinking about it as much as I am. But I feel there might be something there. But like I mentioned before, I do also think there is something in Seth being on his own for a little bit and just being that good that no one can touch him. And maybe it takes Bron to learn the lesson with Heyman for him to go through the trials and tribulations a little bit and rebuild and take stock, that maybe that changes. But we'll wait and see. Obviously, we touched on War Games, but like in terms of the vision itself, like overall, for like the 6 months it's been a thing. And again, it for some reason to me it feels like it's been longer. Do you think that this change has been made because it wasn't quite working, or do you think this change has been made because of how popular the guys have got? I know we touched upon that at the start, but it feels like to me that like the Seth and Heyman dynamic didn't quite work as well as it maybe could have. Maybe it's because, and I think maybe to me it's because Seth was more the guy in charge and he wasn't following the instruction of Heyman. And I feel like Seth was very much like, this is my group, this is my thing.
Yeah.
I'm bringing Paul with me rather than Heyman's taking us to where we need to go.
Yeah.
Which is where it's, for me with Heyman, it always works better when he's the one leading it. Like when you look at Roman and the Bloodline, yes, Roman's in charge and he was the alpha and this, that, and the other, but Heyman, we all know Heyman's pulling the strings in the background, making things work and keeping it all on the same page. So, yeah, do you think this was a knee-jerk reaction because of like the scenarios around it, or do you think it's just because maybe it just wasn't clicking, or do you think there's something else going on there?
I think I do believe a big reason is the popularity of Bron and Bronson becoming so high. I think yes, I do agree that maybe the chemistry between Heyman and Seth wasn't great.
Yeah.
But I do believe a big part of that is that, I don't know, quite often they felt disjointed. They felt that they weren't fully on the same page. But I think that's the story they were trying to tell. Once they sort of realized that from those first few promos that, wait a minute, this Heyman-Seth thing doesn't feel right. That I do think deep down that the long-term plan was initially, okay, let's use that. Let's add these seeds of doubt where Heyman wants to be in control. So the whole Brock thing happens. And that adds that seed of doubt that, and I think that was going to be then the plan, was that eventually Heyman ends up not wanting to be the guy behind the scenes and ends up building this faction and in the background turning Bron and Bronson and making his own faction to overthrow Seth. Right in the back. I think that was the long-term plan. But I do believe that the popularity of Bron and Bronson really has elevated to the point where they were like, although they could have done like an Evolution 2.0 and all the guys be popular, the issue was that the mid-card scene, they don't really want to mess with. They don't really want to take the title off of Dom. And rightfully so. Yet. But they don't want to take the title. They clearly have a plan for that title. So they didn't want that to be involved. And obviously the whole reason Evolution worked back in the day was you had Randy with the IC title, you had the tag bouts be, end up being won and all of this. And in my head, it was like, well, Bron and Bronson are too good for the tag bouts because then who the hell beats them? Because they've become too big at this point. They've been elevated too much. The mid-card bout feels below them, especially because Bron has won it already. Yeah. If Bronson wins it, okay, fine. But then what does Bron do? I think they sort of, the popularity got so high, they were backed into a corner of, well, where do we go? What happens with Bron and Bronson where they don't feel that lackeys? We can keep building them up in the pecking order and also keep Seth at the top. And I felt like it got to a point where they probably were like, maybe we have to pull the trigger now because right now it doesn't feel right. Whereas if they bring in, like the report sort of suggested, like an Austin Theory, if they bring in an Austin Theory to this faction now that has Bron in there and obviously Heyman and Bronson, I think that makes a bit more sense. I mean, that then leads to something more. You can then have maybe Bron go after the title, a little bit of jealousy from Bronson because he's beaten Roman, and Bronson ends up maybe in the tag picture with Theory. Yeah. And Theory's the one that then takes the pins. You got someone there that it feels credible to take. But it's like there's then elements of there's a pecking order. It got to the point where there wasn't a pecking order. They felt on the same level as Seth. And that's proven by the fact that Bronson beat Roman. The only people who have beaten Roman is like Seth, Cody, and now Bronson. Yeah. And obviously Jay also pinned him as well. But you look at the names that I've just named alongside Bronson, they're all main event stars. They're all people who have won the main title. So you don't have Bronson beat Roman unless you plan on him being a huge main event star. Yeah. And a main event star now, not a main event star down the line. And that's the issue that I think they got to, was they're too big. We've got to do something. And I think the faction can work without Seth, and Seth can work without the faction, as you sort of suggested of him being on his own. That can sort of work, this lone wolf of, and And obviously, if someone we've not mentioned in this whole thing is Becky. What does this do to Becky? Becky's only just joined. You know, what does all this mean? Does this mean that, you know, her and Seth have their own little like couples, we're in this together type thing, because everyone hates Becky, so maybe them two are just on their own. They were coupled, literally dejected from everyone else. That could be quite an interesting storyline. But I do think I think it is due to the popularity. I just think when you really think about it, if you were in that booking room and you had to book, even if your plan was to have them split at Mania, if you were to try and book it, I don't know what you could do with Bron and Bronson that would keep progressing them as characters from now until then, without the breakup possibly happening now. When I actually think about it, I never thought they would do it, but now it's done, and I'm thinking about it. I don't think there's anything they could have done that wouldn't have felt like they were stagnating.
I 100% agree. I think it's a kind of, obviously time will tell if the move they've made, obviously on Raw, was the right one, because again, we've seen great turns and we've seen great changes and big storyline moments that haven't paid off. Cena. Sorry, I had a cough there. But I feel like this is the one that's going to set them up for the next sort of 5 years, really. And next few years, if not straight into Mania. Like, again, if WWE really want to go down that road of Bron being the next Roman Reigns, and obviously Bronson being a big-time player now that you expect, now that he's pinned Roman, I can't think of many a better image to set up the next generation than that final WrestleMania shot being Bron with one title and Bronson with the other, and then they're both standing there with Heyman stood between them. Fireworks, pyro, and everything going off. Like, that's a pretty big visual to say, these next guys are here already. We don't have to think about the next lot coming up. So yeah, I think I'm very excited to see what happens next. I think it's I've said this a couple of times with recent developments that it started getting me excited again. But I think this one last night was very much the first one in a while where I was kind of like, this could spin off in a number of different ways, and I'm happy to see whichever way it goes. And just when you think it's going on a bit of a lull, they find a way just to pull the lever and bring you back in. So, yeah, very happy to see that. It'll be interesting to see what the next few shows look like as well, because, obviously we've mentioned War Games, and we're not going to go back into that. But even the Saturday night main event, Saturday night's main event, the next one is like the beginning of November. I think it's like 2 weeks away.
Yeah, it's 1st or 2nd of November. It's really early on.
So again, like that could be a Seth Bron location for that title match, or it could be Seth and Seth 1v2 against Division on his own, where he truly is. He finds out he is on his own and he doesn't have any help. Or do you go down the route of Seth and Punk, where you have that title match, but then Division get involved, and that screws over Punk's chances? It's like, right, I want my hands on them, and that's maybe where you get to War Games, and that's how that develops. That's certainly a route I think they could go. I think as well for the Saturday night's main event in December, that's maybe where you go with Seth and Roman against Division in some form of tag team match as a little appetizer to Cena's final match in a WWE ring. But I just think it's going to be so fascinating to see which way it goes, and it's got me hyped up for what we see next week, because obviously Friday's going to not give us anything really, unless they really are taking over everywhere and they're there for no reason. But yeah, like we've been saying all sorts over the course of this year that they maybe need to mix something up a little bit. Maybe they need to bring the draft in to maybe change the rosters up and give us some new dynamics. But they've given us something there last night, which I think will change things for all the shows across the board. And it's going to be very interesting to see where it goes next. That being said, if you have enjoyed this video, folks, and I know I say it at the end of every video, and this is usually the time you click off, but if you want to give us a helping hand, please consider hitting that subscribe button. We appreciate all of you for watching the video. If you've made it this far as well, you truly are a legend. And as always, folks, if you want to see more wrestling content, hit that like button, hit subscribe, maybe leave a cheeky comment, and we'll see you on the next one, where, of course, we'll be talking all things wrestling. Thanks very much. See you soon.